All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the April 5th, 2022 iteration of the Kubernetes SIG Windows community meeting. As always, these meetings are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so be sure to adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct. We'll start with some announcements. We'll just continue with the 124 release schedule. Important deadlines are test freeze is tonight, and if all of the docs PRs for features that are supposed to go into 124 branch should be ready for review or ready to merge by today. Our event, I know that we're planning on filing an exception for or possibly filing an exception, I guess, depending on how reviews go for the node service log viewer enhancement. Has there been any movement on docs updates for that set of features? Because I wonder if that might also hold, like that might be a question that the release team asks, is if they let it into the release, are the docs updates ready? I just thought of that now.
Yeah, so what I understood is they want a work in progress one opened up by the 31st of March. And I already did that. Like, I think Chris opened up like a blank work in progress one. I don't know whether that should have been like, how complete that should be.
So that one was so that they knew who would be on the hook for doing the docs updates. They want the PRs to be in a reviewable or mergeable state by today as well.
Okay.
Let me double check that. Yeah, so that they have a couple of deadlines. So they want the PRs ready for review by the end of today. Maybe
I should be able to do that. I'll try and write something up.
Okay, like I think they just want it ready for review, because a lot of times when they say they want a placeholder, somebody literally just makes a draft PR with no changes from a new branch. So if there's some content, that might be helpful.
Yeah, okay. I'll write something up.
Okay. And while we're here, I guess we can just go over the next set of milestones. I don't think we're planning on doing any vlogs, or SIG Windows isn't, but those should be ready for review by tomorrow if they are. Next set are so yeah, they want all the PRs reviewed. That's confusing, by the 12th, so there still is some time. And then RC0 should be out on Monday, so that's good. That's all I had for announcements. If anybody else has any announcements, feel free to add it to the docs or chat or comments here. If not, can go. Is there any? We'll welcome new contributors again if there are any. Let me check to see who's on the call. Yeah, if there's anybody who wants to kind of introduce themselves and say hi, figure out how to get involved, feel free to introduce yourselves now, and we can try and help you out. Now we can go into some of the agenda topics. Okay, we've got a couple of agenda topics today. It looks like both networking related, so let's jump in. David, did you want to talk about this a little bit?
Sure, I can go over this. We've been doing some testing with kubeproxy on environments with a lot of endpoints or pods, as well as services running in a given cluster. We noticed that the time taken to plumb all the HNS rules was taking a long time. And we realized that kubeproxy is doing a lot of expensive calls into HNS when trying to sync the rules. So we wanted to optimize that slightly. It's pretty short before the release milestone, so we try to make the changes as close to the previous logic as possible so that we avoid regressions and focus more on validation. So we hope to follow up with more optimizations in coming months, but basically this brings down the time on Windows Server 2022 dramatically, over 10 times. Less time taken to plumb 2000 services, or the rules in HNS 2000 services. There's also HNS changes coming on Windows Server 2019. So the kubeproxy changes today alone won't really make a big difference on Windows Server 2019 because there's a different bottleneck in the operating system and the way the policies are created. And so we have kind of another hotfix coming to Windows Server 2019 that together with this kubeproxy binary would reduce the time taken to plumb services there as well. But ultimately, the best results occur on Windows Server 2022.
Yeah, there's some, looks like pretty significant savings from this.
A side benefit also is the CPU churn is also reduced by making all these calls to HNS.
Oh, that'll be great too. And is the CPU reduction just from these changes, or is there any CPU a reduction from the OS updates too?
We need to take more measurements. We've done kind of both together, but I'm pretty sure the kubeproxy changes alone will also reduce CPU churn.
Okay, that's good. So for this meeting, it looks like, I guess there's maybe a little bit of discussion in the chat too. What do we want to do with this? Do we want to try and have this get merged into 124? Or do we want to hold and wait until 125 and then backport? I think that it looks like the release team is willing to accept this into the 124 release, provided that we can have somebody from the WinKernel proxier approve it.
Yeah, I can follow up with Sravant. He was going to review it like today or tomorrow, I think, so I can ping him on that.
Okay, I think that if we want to get it into 124, it need let me double check, but probably want it to happen today.
Yes.
Somebody commented on it just a few minutes ago that said it needs to be merged by the end of the day today.
Yeah.
Oh, is it Thursday?
It's Thursday,
Sorry.
so
Sorry,
there's
Thursday.
Wednesday.
Oh, that's UTC though. So that's, what is that, tomorrow night, PST?
6 p.m. Wednesday.
Yeah, so 6 p.m. tomorrow.
But still, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think these are good improvements. I think we should try and just merge this, especially if just because I don't know when 125, like when the Kubernetes main branch would be open again to put it into the 125 branch so that we can backport it to the other releases. It'd just be easier and quicker to get it in now, as long as provided that it's like passes the bar and doesn't cause any other regressions.
Yeah, the issue with the many users reported that when they tried to add a new Windows node to existing cluster that was big, there was like network outages on the Windows node because the rules were not like were taking a long time to be plumbed. But yeah.
Oh yeah, and if we get it into the 124 release, we can backport it to 123, 122 earlier. On the call you did mention, you said that because it's I didn't hear the exact wording, but because it's a bug fix, you tried to match the exact logic. Is this the correct fix, or would there be kind of a reason to go and re-architect this in like once 125 opens?
Yeah, we want to re-architect kubeproxy more, have more optimizations, but those are too risky. So for now, we kept the core logic pretty much the same and just cached as much information as possible instead of repeatedly calling into HNS.
Okay.
So that it's kind of trying to reduce as much risk as possible and leave all the riskier, bigger changes for the next release.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, so I think next steps are to try and see if Sravant can review to get the Win proxy approval. We should also ask Jay to take a look.
Yeah, let me follow up with James, maybe offline as well, the comments.
Okay, yeah, we can update the comments after the meeting too then. Yeah, let's If let's try and just get this merged by tomorrow, or do we have all of the? Do we have the Windows tests running?
We ran them at one point.
Okay,
I think
but then
so
there
many
was-
changes got pushed.
Yeah. Sounds good. Let's try and make this happen for 124 then. This looks like a pretty impactful change. Does anybody else have any comments, concerns on this? If not, we can go on to the next agenda item. All right, and thanks for taking a look at that, David, and getting the PR out in a state that is mergeable for 124.
Sure, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we can go on to the next item. James, did you want to discuss this, or I can provide some background?
Is Claude here? He might be
Oh,
the
yeah.
best
Yeah.
person for that.
Yeah, I can go ahead then. So last night there was a pull request that was merged, which is that one exactly.
Mhm.
Basically, there are a bunch of tests in conformance which are excluded from Windows runs. They are typically typed with Linux only tag, but most of them were also limitations from Docker, for example. But since we've switched to Containerd, we could basically enable more and more tests, and especially since we've also introduced host processes, which can also support host networks. A few tests that have been enabled for Windows by removing that Linux only skip tag are currently failing in the CapZ job, which is using Calico, but only for overlay networks for Calico at the very least. But we did see that for Containerd Flanner SDN overlay, it does work, which would be something like this. This is an example of where this test is working. I'm gonna paste the test name there. So that passed at least once. It's probably going to run another run today. Now, the plan is for now to exclude those two tests from the CapZ master jobs with overlay networks for now, but ideally they should be addressed and have them working for other CNIs as well for overlay networks. Technically, it should work. We've already seen Flannel do it and pass, but other CNIs should also be able to do it. We're talking about conformance tests here, so it would be a good idea to conform to them, to say so.
Yeah, so I actually see Jay just got online. He might be interested. A couple of comments. I'm actually a little bit surprised that this PR merged yesterday, just given where we are on the release, especially given that it was open for many, many months, but that's neither here nor there. You might be interested in this, Jay, and anybody who's interested in Antrea too.
Okay.
I guess so. We're seeing a new test failure that's happening in the CapZ clusters with overlay and Calico networking configuration on our CapZ master jobs. That is passing with an overlay and flannel configuration, which leads us to indicate that it's not an issue or with Windows Server or like with Windows. With overlay networking on Windows, and it's an issue with Calico. And I think as Claudio just mentioned, since these are conformance tests, it would make sense for them to have the same behavior across all of the different networking CNI, all the CNIs. So we were just, yeah, we were discussing this at the triage meeting for anybody who joined a little bit early. But a couple of questions.
It's really weird because I was just looking at the overlay setup for Calico and I was like, this is really weird how this is hard coded. I can't imagine this always works. But
Well, you're right. Well, it's also worth noting that those two tests, which are failing on Calico overlay, they pass on all L2 bridge networks or SDN bridge networks. So this is another of those things that doesn't have matching behavior across CNIs and network types.
yeah, there's more stuff hard coded in the overlay path than there is the L2 bridge path. I'm looking at it right now. This is interesting. Okay, so when did this all start failing?
Yesterday, when that pull request merged, which enabled those two tests to be run on Windows as well, they had the Linux only type before.
I mean, I know over at Rancher, our friends at Rancher, I don't know if they're here today, but we were looking at Calico. I mean, I think we had a thought that maybe Calico didn't work at all in 121 on Windows or something. Like, I think we should kind of assume that Calico isn't something we can guarantee to run on Windows in CI.
David
Yeah.
posted something in chat too, and he asked if we know if we have a host route policy set up for in Calico. And it looks like that's a lot of
Host.
changed files. Wow.
What's a host route policy?
So they changed the HCSM version. You go to the commit, the specific commit where the changes are. Go to files. Yeah, changed.
This one? Or
Yeah, and then yeah, changes from all commits,
you want me to just look at changes from
and
which
then
one?
go and yeah, this one.
Okay. Oh, are the rest of them just vendored files?
Yeah, this vendors. Yeah,
Okay.
you see the if at host route, adding this network policy that's ensures for overlay networking that the node to pod communication will work, at least for like local pods that are running on the.
So we're saying that Flannel has fixed a problem that Calico hasn't fixed. Is that what we're talking about here?
We don't
just
know yet.
It may be one.
Is that the
it may be-
hypothesis?
Yeah.
Okay. So one hypothesis is something was broken and Flannel fixed it first, which means Luther knows what's going on. Where's
David,
Luther?
one quick question, David. Did you just say that basically it fixes the node pod communication for the same nodes, same node pod communication? Basically, fixes the communication between the node and a pod on it, but
Yes.
not necessarily cross node.
No, not necessarily. But pods can still connect to other node ports, for example. Those tests would still be succeeding.
Yeah.
But if
I'm gonna
the
try to
node
get-
wants to reach out to a pod, then you need this change for it to work locally at least. I'm just
Okay.
thinking of a possible difference between Flannel and Calico, because it seems that one test was passing on Flannel, and this might be something that's unique to Flannel that I know we have worked on in the past and added to Flannel, but I don't remember us adding something similar to Calico. It's
Yeah,
just one possible difference to
Mhm,
look into.
mhm.
I'm not saying it's the difference, right? Just something to maybe.
No, but I
Okay.
think it makes sense to investigate.
I will have to take another look at the test then, just to make sure it doesn't spawn multiple pods and on different nodes, because in that case it might be problematic.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Thanks, David.
So I think
Yeah.
either way, we're going to, should we still disable the test for,
So it does have add host route. So it does
Calico
have the
does?
host. Yeah, I just looked it up.
is it behind a? Is that like that code path enabled? It's just because it's in the code doesn't necessarily mean it's being triggered like here.
For sure, but it's in the code.
Okay, so we should, I guess first is we should confirm if the actual network config on the host is, if that's enabled. But yeah. Okay, I guess,
Okay, and this is specifically only happening with overlay.
Yes.
yes.
So we did see, David, we also did see some issues with Calico's DSR support. I put in a PR to start to fix that. Is it possible that this is causing problems because they don't have the right DSR or like loopback stuff?
You mean this loopback DSR rule?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a very specific case.
But
So
is
it's pod service where the service can point back to the source pod.
how bad is the failure? I mean, are pods coming up? Is Core DNS working on Windows nodes? Is like the CNI coming up? Like,
Yeah, everything.
I mean,
like it's just this. The pods actually come up online and they're working. It's just the data flow from one pod to another is not passing. The rest of the tests are passing.
Which is it? This one? I
Yeah,
guess
those two.
both of these.
Yep.
Yeah, they're pretty similar tests. Yeah,
okay,
anybody who's working on Entria may want to double check the behavior on Entria. And I think,
yeah,
and report either way if it's working or not, to see if it's something special Flannel's doing to enable this, or something that just Calico needs to be updated to support.
yeah. Antria passes this, I think, for sure. Right, Ameem? I mean, we run this test in our CI now, right?
Well, this test would have, like, the PR to enable this test to remove the Linux
Oh.
only tag merged yesterday. So unless you
Oh.
guys were running Linux only tests on Windows clusters, you might not have seen this run either way.
Yeah,
Run this
But-
Interact Blossom. Just see the result.
this pod should function from node to pod, node to pod. Yeah, this is node specific. Okay. Yeah, we don't run this. You're right. Okay.
Yeah,
It
just
may
gotta
start
enable this.
running, and if you guys, it may start running if you pick up a new EDE test binary that updated those labels.
Okay.
The add to host route is in Calico. It's been in there since 3.20. So
Another thing we could look into is if we run collect logs, there's a script collect logs that outputs all the policy information. We could maybe compare that on the Flannel overlay environment versus Calico. See what the difference is.
Do we
Mhm.
do that, James?
we do.
We run the
Uh,
collect Windows logs.
Well, we run subsets of that. So the HNS endpoints and the HNS endpoints detailed give you
Okay.
all of the policies and stuff.
Okay, I think we could finish up offline discussing this since we're almost out of time. But
And it won't actually be there because this only runs at the end of the test. It doesn't run. We don't collect it for every single test because it's a lot of data.
And I didn't I never thought about the fact that we're going to be enabling new conformance Windows tests. So maybe Claudio, can you file an issue or something for what we need to add to the operational readiness filters and spec cap so that we get all that in there?
Sure. I basically had two pull requests which enable some set of
Okay.
tests. There aren't too many of them. I don't know how many, like 10-ish tests. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. Cool.
I didn't count them.
Yeah, that's fine. We can count them up and figure it out. If you just file an issue of what things we should count and how often we should count them and what we should track, I'm sure we can do the rest. Or if you want to file a PR or whatever. I'd file the issue myself, but I'm not quite sure exactly what the workflow is for adding Windows conformance stuff. So I just want to make sure I do the right thing, you know.
Okay.
Yep.
Where do you want me to open this?
Oh, anywhere. I mean, if you want to, maybe it's in enhancements, right? Because we're still working on the operational readiness cap. So you could either add a PR to the operational readiness cap of like what these new tests are that you're adding, or you could just file an issue to remind, like, I don't know who's working. Chinchi's working on it now, right? So just assign an issue to Chinchi or something, or me or a meme to talk to you about the new tests we're adding or whatever. You know, it could be anything, right?
Sure. Will do.
Probably enhancements, right? It's probably the best place to do it. Just tag us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or actually, PR is the easiest, I guess, because then we don't have to do anything at all.
Quick question, Claudio.
Yes.
Most of them just work at removing the Linux only task. Is that
Not necessarily. For example, for those two tests that, as an example, for those two tests that were enabled, they require host networking. Typically, you cannot enable host networking for Windows pods, but if you're using host processes, you can. So basically, for those cases, we are creating privileged containers or host processes and enable host networking on them in order to pass the test for whatever CNIs are passing right now. So some of them are making some changes to the tests themselves, but not necessarily to how kubelet or containerd is working.
Are the tests deterministic?
I mean, if they're not deterministic, then they're not. They will be labeled as flaky.
Well, I mean, like if I have a mixed OS cluster and I run a conformance suite on it once, and all my pods land on Linux nodes, and then I run the same thing again.
Okay.
And then some of them run on Windows nodes. Do I have like an inherent flake potential in the conformance suite now?
Okay, so typically you would want to taint one set of nodes, like the Linux nodes or the Windows nodes. The idea is that there's tests which rely on a flag that you pass to the E2E test binary, something like node OS distro.
Yeah, node OS distro equals Windows.
Yeah, exactly. Because based on that
so
flag,
if you pass that, the conformance test will schedule the workload pods to Windows nodes. Okay.
No.
No.
I don't think so. You would have to. We would have to typically add a label for every single pod that's spawned by the test itself. In our scenario,
we do that. I think we
we
check node OS distro in the E2Es inside of the Ginkgo, right?
Are we not tainting the nodes?
We are.
Well, that's an
At least in
infrastructure
Caps,
thing.
Yeah.
At the E2E level, we tech node OS distro and we spin up a different type of pod based on the node OS distro.
Not for every pod. Not for every test though.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Just a second, Jay. Typically, when you say that you're spawning a different type of pod, that's not really the case so much anymore, because most of the E2E test images support both Linux and Windows. So you're basically using the same test images for both OSs. but there are quite a
it's
lot
just
of
the label.
places.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's just the label.
Yeah.
But there are all different checks in the tests themselves, which rely on that Node OS distro, which is set
Mhm.
for all sorts of cases and scenarios. This is one of them. For example, for those tests, we're basically looking at the Node OS distro, and if it is Windows, we are basically setting the host processes to true.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember in EKS, in AKS, these do pass, James, but in EKS, I remember they don't taint.
Mhm.
And so
And
we had to add labels to some of the SIG Windows tests.
there are, I don't know
Scheduling
how
labels.
many, but there's at least one test which basically is running on a hybrid cluster, basically.
Mhm.
It is spawning pods on Linux and on Windows and make sure that they can talk to each other, which is an extremely useful use case to have, just to make sure that you can properly work in a hybrid environment. That's the only test that I remember at this moment that spawns on both types of nodes, pods.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can look some at this tomorrow morning. I think I might ping you in Slack tomorrow morning, Claudio.
My morning or your morning?
Your morning, my morning,
Oh.
but I don't know.
Okay.
Somebody's morning. Okay.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I have a little update I didn't put in the doc. I am talking to Shravanth about handing over the kubeproxy kernel space KPNG port over to Microsoft. So I was real excited that Microsoft is officially investing now in moving the kubeproxy over to KPNG. And so if anybody wants to help or be a part of that conversation as we hand that code over, let me know.
I do have a question though.
Yeah.
Being a PNG, does it have transparency?
Transparency, what? What's
You
that?
know the image format PNG.
Oh, it's a joke. Oh, you're making. Oh, Claudio's making jokes again.
Sorry, I didn't
Man.
say a joke for too long, so you know.
Oh, it's a good joke. That was a good joke.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So are we done with the official meeting, or is there anything else we wanted to go through?
That's it. I think
Yeah.
from my end.
Awesome.
I'll
right, I'm
check
gonna-
up on
I'm gonna
this tomorrow.
Stop the recording then. Thanks for everybody for attending.
All right.